So the Mangird Teas, just as they were getting to be known, Mangird decided to just rename themselves as Sense now. So if you want to look up Mangird Tea, if you can't find them in your local store, you might want to just try looking up Sense Tea. I don't know what was behind that renaming, but you know, whatever, right? And just before I started recording this video, or actually as I pressed the record button, I had to kill a mosquito. So that blood stain that you see on my hands, that's the blood stain from a mosquito. It's not me bleeding. It might be my blood as well, but I don't know whether or not it was my blood, because that mosquito, I did get bitten by a mosquito just now as well. So I don't know where they're coming from. I guess it's because it's raining and all. But yeah, anyway, so the Mangird Tea themselves here were provided by a subscriber, right? So this review will just be of my own complete honest opinion. I'm not affiliated to any store, any brand whatsoever. So yeah, that's that. So we'll just gloss over the build quality and packaging just real quick. We didn't get the whole package, we just got like the case and just a few ear-tips that come with it. We didn't get the whole package, so there's not a lot of things to cover. The Mangird Tea themselves are like this pseudo custom IEM shape. They're a bit deeper fit, but they're not very deep fit, right? But it's not exactly shallow as well. The nozzle themselves are like standard ear tip size, right? So your casual like spin fit CP100s and all, they will fit just well on these, no problem, right? The IEMs themselves use a 2-pin connection. There's a big ass fan on the back, and the shell of these Mangird Teas are just like sort of like translucent, so you can actually see the resistor that's inside of the shell. I hope the camera can catch this. I don't know if it can. Maybe okay. So now, anyway, the faceplate of the Mangird Teas, I think it looks pretty damn nice. It just cuts off a little bit too early, so it feels a bit odd to see here. The pattern doesn't really finish, so yeah, aside from the faceplate looking good, it just doesn't seem like it integrates well into the IEM shell, but no biggie. It's like $270. I'm not gonna ask for that much. The cable themselves that comes with this IEM it's pretty decent. It's supple enough. It's not the most supple cable in the world. It's not too microphonic, and there's this sheet that just pre-shapes the cable itself, so it fits on your ears. At least it fits on my ears quite well. So my ears are like medium to large sized ears, and they fit me quite well. The cable is a bit heavy. It's not too heavy, not that bad. The chin slider works well, and the jack is a straight jack. Unfortunately, I am on the camp that says mobile devices should all have ankle jacks, as I've broken one too many headphone jacks with straight jacks in my pocket. So yeah, anyway, the case that comes with it is this sort of like pleather case, and you get like 8 pairs of ear tips with the Mangird Teas. You get like a couple of pairs of foam ear tips and 6 pairs of like these like silicone ear tips. I don't know exactly what the differences are, aside from bore size, and just these feel like the Knowledge Zenith Starline ear tips, and these feel like the more like what's it called, like the like a fine like Sony hybrid clones, something like that. And there's another mosquito on my hand. God damn it. Now, anyway, now that's out of the way. Let's just talk about the sound of the Mangird Teas. So the Mangird Teas, right, all in all, I would say they're a pretty damn decent IEM. Right, for $270, I would say that they're a pretty damn good IEM. And we'll get more into that once we start talking about the bass. Right, so the bass of the Mangird Tea is slightly elevated. It's not nowhere near bass head levels, it's just slightly elevated. So if you like slightly elevated bass, this might be a good choice. The bass of these, the sub bass just extends quite deeply, right? And the sub bass slam itself, I would say, is also quite pleasant. Mid bass punch is also quite good. The speed of the bass is more on the medium side, borderline medium to slow. Right, and the bass itself doesn't really have great control. It bleeds into the mid-range a little bit, So that's probably the biggest problem with the bass. But aside from that, the bass texture itself at least is pretty damn nice. Now, talking about that mid-range bass bleed, right? Mid-bass bleed. See, the Mangird Tea's mid-range, I can't quite get my grasp on what's wrong with the mid-range. Overall, it sounds pretty relaxing. It doesn't sound anywhere aggressive. The upper mids are very well just like dampened, sort of. You don't feel like they're ever just coming forward at you. They're very relaxed. They're not that thick. They're just a couple notches above what I would say neutral. So overall, they're just a very smooth presentation, but there's just something very off about the mid-range. I can't really get my grasp on what's wrong with the mid-range, but most of the time it sounds quite pleasant. I can say that much. So if you're looking for an IEM that doesn't sound too aggressive, especially for female vocals, I think the Mangird Teas will fit the bill quite well there. Now, putting that aside, the overall detail and separation of the mid-range is also okay for the price. I think they do a pretty damn good job. And yeah, aside from that, just tonality, just that in the mid-range, that's just a little bit off. I think all in all, I don't have a lot of complaints of the mid-range on the Mangird Teas. Now, the treble of the Mangird Teas is probably where I have the biggest problem. So, the treble of the Mangird Teas, although these do sound quite laid back, which normally I would very much like. I am quite treble sensitive and upper mid sensitive, so generally I would like an IEM that at least has like very smooth treble or at least quite laid back treble, so that I can listen to them for quite an extended period of time. Now, the Mangird Teas, albeit they have this laid back treble, there's also this BA timbre that's quite apparent on the Mangird Teas, especially once you listen to songs that are not really very well tuned and they're not very well mastered, and especially compression. How do I say this? So compression is a little bit softened, but it's also a bit more apparent on these. Like they're nowhere near as harsh as another IEM would present compression as the Mangird Teas do, right? But it's just quite a bit more apparent, and it's even worse once you listen to cymbals on the Mangird Teas, because although most of the treble range is quite laid back, no problems at all. For some reason, on cymbals, the Mangird Teas just become quite splashy and quite offensive to my ears. So whenever I listen to cymbals on these, the cymbals just start to sound wrong, and then especially on faster songs, they just mix together. They just become a bit mushy overall. So I'm not a huge fan of these when songs start getting busy and like once there's like a lot of cymbals going into play. So metal and such don't really work quite well on the Mangird Teas, but like medium to slower music such as jazz and such, I think they're very well presented on these, and I can listen to those types of songs for a very long time on the Mangird Teas. But on songs that are a bit more aggressive, yes, and those that have a lot of cymbals in them, I find it kind of hard to listen to them on the Mangird Teas a lot of times, because it just becomes a bit of a mush. The mush annoys me more than the splashiness of the overall cymbal presentation of the Mangirds. So yeah, that's that. But aside from that, the treble of the Mangird Teas at least extends very damn well. That I can give points to them. So yeah. As long as your music collection doesn't have a lot of like very fast music, which contains a lot of cymbals especially, I think the Mangird Teas will do you just fine. Now, when we talk about soundstation imaging, the Mangird Teas, if this were my head, right? So the Mangird Teas actually present soundstage quite widely. So it's almost at the same width of my head, which is quite impressive, I would say, especially for an IEM. Yes, it does have a big ass fan on the back, and isolation isn't the best on these, but I think the presentation, the soundstage overall of the Mangird Teas is still quite wide. So that's cool. Imaging wise, I was also able to get an accuracy of like 45ish degrees on the Mangird Teas, so that's neat. And overall, again, as per usual, disclaimer, I perceive soundstage and imaging quite differently from other reviewers, so take it with a huge grain of salt. But yeah, all in all, I think in the soundstage and imaging department, I think the Mangird Teas just do their job quite well. So yeah. Now, a quick comparison, which I think is raised quite a lot of times, is against the Blessing 2s, right? So against the Blessing 2s, I would say overall, the Mangird Teas, they're just a notch below in terms of technicalities compared to the Blessing 2s. Data retrieval and separation, overall in all sectors, I think the Mangird Teas are just at least half a step or one step behind compared to the Blessing 2s. The Blessing 2s, granted, are a bit more expensive, so it's kind of expected a little bit, and I think the Blessing 2s, even at their price, punches a bit above the price range, right? So take that into consideration. The Blessing 2's overall base quantity is a little bit less compared to the Mangird Teas. The Blessing 2 has better control of the bass, but it does have, to me, a little less extension compared to the Mangird Teas. But at least, again, because the Blessing 2s have better bass control, it doesn't have that much bleed into the mid-range or at all. So that's something. Overall, the mid-range of the Blessing 2s also sound clearer to me. But on the other hand, the Blessing 2's upper mids can sound very aggressive, especially on female vocals or violins. So if you're very easily offended in that region, just shy away from the Blessing 2s, right? Don't come close to the Blessing 2s, right? But overall, the mid-range of the Blessing 2s to me just sound a bit more correct. There's just this something, this quality which I'm not able to quite grasp on the Mangird Teas, which make them just sound a bit off to me. So yeah. Now, when we talk about treble, again, the Blessing 2s might have more treble overall, right? The Blessing 2s to me have a little less extension compared to the Mangird Teas. The Mangird Teas just have way better extension and better air to me. But the Blessing 2's symbol representation to me overall is just that much better compared to the Mangird Teas, which I would say the Mangird Teas is probably its weakest point, aside from its just odd mid-range tonality, okay, which I would like to emphasize. To some people will sound very pleasing, and even on my initial listen, the Mangird Teas mid-range to me sound very pleasing. I was listening to some Mandarin vocal songs. I don't remember the title anymore. It's somewhere in my playlist. I'll put it up in the video if I remember. Right, and for some other songs, they will just sound off. On the Blessing 2s, at least, most of the time, they will just sound consistently great. Yeah, although they can be offensive on female vocals. Yeah, granted. So yeah, that's that. Aside from that, the fit on these, I think the Mangird Teas will probably be an easier fit for most people, because the Blessing 2s are just massive. Look at the size difference on these things. They're freaking massive, right, compared to the Mangird Teas. And yeah, soundstage and imaging, I think the soundstage on the Mangird Teas are also actually wider compared to the Blessing 2s. Imaging wise, I think they're pretty much on equal terms. So yeah, I think that's that for the review. It's already at 15 minutes, so yeah, that's that. So if you like this video, comment what you think, and subscribe if you want more content like this, and I'll see you guys next time.